The morning sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Dry Hollow, a forgotten town clinging to life in the harsh Texas borderlands. Eden Carter stood beside her stepfather, Samuel Briggs, trying not to sway on her feet. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Sam had gambled away their last coins at the saloon, along with everything else they owned. "Stand up straight, girl," Sam hissed, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey despite the early hour. His bloodshot eyes darted nervously toward the bank building across the street. "He'll be here soon." Eden didn't ask who he was. She'd learned long ago that questions only earned her the back of Sam's hand. Instead, she focused on the horizon where the red earth met the endless sky, imagining herself somewhere far away from this moment. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention back to the present. A lone rider approached, his silhouette dark against the morning glare. As he drew closer, Eden could make out the details. A tall man astride a black stallion, dressed in dark clothing that seemed untouched by the dust that coated everything else in Dry Hollow. His hat cast a shadow over his face, but she could feel his gaze sweep over her with the cold assessment of a man appraising livestock. This was Wade Kestrel. Even Eden, isolated as she'd been, knew the name. The wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, owner of the sprawling Red Mesa Ranch. They called him the Iron Cattle Baron, a man who'd carved out an empire in this unforgiving land through sheer force of will and, some whispered, through blood. Wade dismounted with fluid grace, his spurs clicking against the wooden boardwalk as he approached. When he finally lifted his head, Eden saw a face that might have been handsome if not for the complete absence of warmth in his gray eyes. They were the color of winter storm clouds, and just as unforgiving. "Briggs," Wade said, his voice low and gravelly. It wasn't a greeting so much as an acknowledgement. Sam removed his hat, wringing it between his hands. "Mr. Kestrel, sir, thank you for coming. As I said in my message, I've got a proposition that'll square my debts." Wade's gaze shifted to Eden, and she felt the weight of it like a physical thing. He studied her face, her worn calico dress, her hands, checking for signs of disease or weakness. She realized with a sick feeling in her stomach. "This her?" Wade asked. "My stepdaughter, Eden, 17 years old, strong as an ox, knows how to keep house. She can cook, clean, tend to animals. I didn't ask for a list of her qualities. Briggs." Wade's interruption was sharp as a whip crack. "I asked if this was her." Sam nodded frantically. "Yes, sir. She's a good girl, obedient, won't give you no trouble." Eden's fingernails dug into her palms. She wanted to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there like a prize heifer at auction. But where would she go? She had no family left, no money, nowhere to run in this vast, empty land. Wade reached into his coat and withdrew a leather pouch. The clink of coins as he counted them out seemed obscenely loud in the morning quiet. $300. That covers your debts at Donnelly's Saloon and the mortgage payment you owe McKenna. Now, Mr. Kestrel, sir," Sam started, licking his lips. "I was thinking more along the lines of 500. Wade's hand moved to his hip, not quite touching the Colt revolver that hung there, but the gesture was clear. 300. Take it or leave it. Briggs, but if you leave it, you'd better be prepared to pay McKenna what you owe by sunset, or you'll be decorating a tree by morning." The color drained from Sam's face. Everyone knew Wade Kestrel's reputation. They said he'd killed 7 men in disputes over land and cattle, though he'd never seen the inside of a jail cell. Money and influence had a way of making such problems disappear in the frontier. "300's fair," Sam said quickly, holding out his hand for the pouch. Wade dropped it into his palm, then turned his attention back to Eden. "Get your things." "I don't have any things," Eden said, finding her voice for the first time. It came out steadier than she felt. Something flickered in Wade's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she could speak at all. "Then let's go." "Wait," Eden said, turning to Sam. "You can't just, I'm not cattle to be sold." Sam's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "You ain't my blood. Girl, your mama's dead, and I've fed and clothed you for 5 years. Time you earned your keep." He was already backing away, clutching the money pouch like a lifeline. Eden watched her stepfather retreat into the saloon, not even looking back. 5 years of keeping his house, mending his clothes, enduring his drunken rages, and this was how it ended. Sold like property to pay gambling debts. "The wagon's this way," Wade said, his tone suggesting the matter was settled. Eden had no choice but to follow. As they walked, she became aware of faces peering from windows and doorways. The good people of Dry Hollow, watching her shame, whispering behind their hands. By noon, everyone would know that Sam Briggs had sold his stepdaughter to Wade Kestrel. The wagon was well made and sturdy, pulled by 2 matched bay horses. Wade helped her up with impersonal efficiency, his hands touching her no longer than necessary. He climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of town, Eden took one last look back at Dry Hollow. She'd hated the place, but at least she'd understood the shape of her life there. Now she was heading into the unknown with a man whose reputation was written in blood. The journey to Red Mesa took most of the day. Wade drove in complete silence, his attention fixed on the trail ahead. Eden studied him from the corner of her eye, trying to understand this man who now owned her. His profile was harsh, all sharp angles and weathered lines. She guessed he was perhaps 35, maybe 40. His hands on the reins were scarred and capable, the hands of a man who'd built his fortune through hard labor before he'd had men to do it for him. The landscape changed as they traveled, from the scrubland around Dry Hollow to the vast grasslands that surrounded Red Mesa. Cattle dotted the horizon in every direction, more than Eden had ever seen in one place. In the distance, she could make out riders moving among the herds. Wade's men, she supposed. The sun was beginning to sink when Wade finally spoke. "There," he said, nodding toward the horizon. Eden followed his gaze and saw Red Mesa for the first time. The ranch house sat on a natural rise, commanding a view of the surrounding territory. It was bigger than any building in Dry Hollow. 2 stories of timber and stone that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. Outbuildings spread around it, barns, bunkhouses, storage sheds. This wasn't just a ranch. It was a small kingdom. "It's big," Eden said, immediately feeling foolish. "It needs to be," Wade replied. "Red Mesa covers 15,000 acres. I employ 42 men full-time, more during roundup." They drove through an elaborate gate marked with the Red Mesa brand, a stylized K with a horizontal line through it. Men paused in their work to watch the wagon pass. Eden saw curiosity in some faces, pity in others. None of them met her eyes directly. Wade pulled up in front of the main house and climbed down. He didn't offer to help Eden this time. She managed on her own, trying to ignore the way her legs shook. A middle-aged Mexican woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face was carefully neutral as she took in Eden's appearance. "Rosa," Wade said. "Show her to the blue room. She'll be staying there." Rosa nodded. "See, Senor Kestrel. And dinner? I'll take it in my study. She can eat in the kitchen." Eden felt a flash of indignation at being discussed like she wasn't there, but she held her tongue. She was too tired, too overwhelmed to fight. Wade started toward the house, then paused. "What's your full name?" Eden Carter." He nodded once and continued inside without another word. Rosa's expression softened slightly once Wade was gone. "Come, Nina, you look tired." Eden followed her into the house, trying not to gawk at the interior. The entrance hall was larger than the entire shack she'd shared with Sam. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of landscapes, furniture that gleamed with polish. Everything spoke of wealth and permanence. Rosa led her up a curving staircase and down a hallway to a door at the far end. The blue room was aptly named. Blue curtains, blue bedspread, a blue ceramic pitcher on the washstand. It was the finest room Eden had ever seen, and the sight of it made her situation feel even more surreal. "There are clothes in the wardrobe," Rosa said. "They may be a bit large, but we can alter them. Would you like me to bring up some hot water for washing?" "Yes, please," Eden managed. "Thank you." Rosa hesitated at the door. "A word of advice. Nina, Senor Kestrel is not a cruel man, but he is complicated. Keep to yourself. Do as you're told, and you'll be fine." After Rosa left, Eden sank onto the bed, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. This morning, she'd been Eden Carter, stepdaughter of a drunk, but at least knowing her place in the world. Now she was... what? Not a wife, certainly. Not exactly a servant either. Given this room, she was something in between, something with no name. As darkness fell outside the window, Eden heard footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside her door. She held her breath, praying Wade would pass by, but the doorknob turned. He entered without knocking, closing the door behind him. In the lamplight, his face was all shadows and hard planes. He'd removed his coat and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked by scars. "There are things you need to understand," he said without preamble. "You're here because I choose for you to be here. You don't leave the ranch without my permission. You don't ask questions about my business. You don't interfere with the running of this place." Eden nodded, not trusting her voice. Wade moved closer, and she caught the scent of leather and tobacco and something else, something wild and dangerous. "I didn't buy you to be a maid. Rosa and the others handle the house. I didn't buy you to be a proper wife either." "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Eden's throat felt like it was closing. She understood. Of course she understood. She'd known from the moment Wade had looked at her in Dry Hollow what kind of arrangement this was. "I understand," she whispered. Wade studied her face for a long moment. "You're not going to cry." It wasn't a question, but Eden shook her head anyway. She'd learned long ago that tears only made things worse. "Good," Wade said. He turned and walked to the window, gazing out at his domain. "My mother is dying. She doesn't have long, weeks, maybe days. She needs tending. Rosa does what she can, but Mother needs more than that. She needs companionship, someone to sit with her, read to her, help her feel less alone." This wasn't what Eden had expected. "You want me to care for your mother?" Among other things. Wade's voice was flat, emotionless. "You'll start tomorrow. Rosa will show you what needs doing." He turned back to her, and Eden saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or some deeper wound that he kept carefully hidden. "One more thing," he said, moving toward her with the inevitable purpose of a storm. "From tonight, you belong to Red Mesa, to me. That means something out here, something the law doesn't touch. Do you understand?" Eden lifted her chin, finding a spark of the courage that had kept her surviving this long. "I understand that you paid $300 for me, but that doesn't mean you bought my soul." Wade's laugh was short and humorless. "Your soul? I don't want your soul. Eden Carter, souls are messy things, full of complications I don't need." He was standing directly in front of her now, close enough that she could see the silver threads in his dark hair. "I just need you to keep me human, to remind me that I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am." Then he kissed her. The morning after her first night at Red Mesa, Eden woke to sunlight streaming through the blue curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the ache in her body and the unfamiliar surroundings brought everything rushing back. She pressed her face into the pillow, fighting the urge to scream. A knock at the door made her sit up quickly. Rosa entered carrying a pitcher of hot water and fresh towels. "Buenos dias," Rosa said gently. "Senor Kestrel has already ridden out with the men. He says you're to breakfast in the kitchen. Then I'll take you to see Senora Judith." Eden nodded, grateful for Rosa's matter-of-fact manner. No pity, no judgment, just practical kindness. After washing and dressing in one of the 2 large dresses from the wardrobe, Eden made her way downstairs. The kitchen was warm and filled with the smell of baking bread. A handful of ranch hands sat at a long table, finishing their morning meal. Conversation stopped when she entered. "Don't mind them," Rosa said, setting a plate of eggs and biscuits before Eden. "They're not used to new faces." One of the younger cowboys, barely older than Eden herself, offered a shy smile. "I'm Jeb Morrison. Miss, welcome to Red Mesa." "Eden," she replied, grateful for the small kindness. "Jeb helps with the horses." Rosa explained. He's got the gentlest hand with them of anyone on the ranch. Except for Mr. Kestrel, Jeb added quickly. Nobody rides like the boss. An older hand snorted. Nobody does much of anything like the boss. Man's got ice water in his veins. Hank, Rosa warned. Just speaking truth. Hank muttered, but he subsided under Rosa's stern gaze. After breakfast, Rosa led Eden to a room at the back of the house. Senora Judith's room, she explained. She had the apoplexy 6 months ago. Can't move her left side. Can't speak much, but she understands everything. You must remember that. She understands. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the morning sun. In the large bed lay a woman who must once have been beautiful. Even now, wasted by illness. Judith Kestrel retained an air of refinement. Her hair, still more gold than gray, was carefully braided. Her nightgown was finest white cotton, edged with lace. But it was her eyes that caught Eden's attention, the same storm gray as her son's, but filled with a warmth Wade's lacked. Senora, Rosa said softly, this is Eden. She's come to sit with you. Judith's eyes moved to Eden, studying her with surprising sharpness. Her right hand moved slightly on the coverlet, a greeting. Eden realized. Hello, Mrs. Kestrel, Eden said, moving closer. I'm pleased to meet you. Something that might have been approval flickered in Judith's eyes. Rosa showed Eden the routine. How to help Judith drink. How to adjust her pillows. How to read the small signals that indicated what she needed. There were books on the bedside table, letters tied with ribbon, a music box that played a melancholy waltz. She likes to be read to, Rosa said. And the letters, those are from her sister back east. She likes to hear them, even though she knows them by heart. When Rosa left, Eden settled into the chair beside the bed. She picked up a well-worn volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. Shall I read to you? She asked. Judith's right hand moved. Yes, Eden began to read, her voice soft in the quiet room. As the morning passed, she found herself relaxing. There was something peaceful about this, something that made the horror of the previous night seem distant. Judith dozed occasionally, but always woke when Eden stopped reading, her eyes asking for more. Around noon, Eden heard boots in the hallway. Her stomach tightened, but they passed by. She realized she'd been holding her breath. You're afraid of him, she said quietly to Judith. Your son. I suppose I should be too. But last night... She trailed off, unsure why she was confiding in this silent woman. He said he needs me to keep him human. What did he mean? Judith's eyes filled with tears. Her good hand reached out, grasping Eden's weakly. I'm sorry, Eden said quickly. I shouldn't have... But Judith shook her head slightly, squeezing Eden's hand. Her lips moved, forming silent words Eden couldn't decipher. That afternoon, Jeb found Eden in the kitchen garden where Rosa had sent her to pick herbs. Thought you might like to see the ranch, he offered. Mr. Kestrel won't be back until supper. I could show you around, if you'd like. Eden hesitated. Wade had said she couldn't leave the ranch, but surely looking around the property itself was allowed. Just the near buildings, Jeb added, seeming to understand her concern. You ought to know your way around. Eden agreed, and Jeb proved to be an enthusiastic guide. He showed her the stables, introducing her to the horses with obvious affection, the bunkhouse, where the hands lived, the smokehouse, the blacksmith's shop, the vegetable gardens that supplemented what Rosa bought in town. How long have you worked here? Eden asked as they walked. 3 years come spring. Mr. Kestrel hired me when I was just 15. My folks died of the fever, and I was fixing to starve when he found me trying to steal one of his horses. Jeb grinned ruefully. Thought he was going to shoot me. Instead, he offered me a job. He seems... Eden searched for the right word. Hard? Cold? Dangerous? Jeb suggested. He's all of that, but he's fair too, pays honest wages, doesn't cheat his men, and he's loyal. You ride for the brand. He'll back you against anyone. They paused at a corral where a magnificent stallion paced, black as midnight with a white star on his forehead. That's Tempest, Jeb said. Mr. Kestrel's horse. Won't let anyone else near him. They say the boss caught him wild up in the canyon country. Broke him himself. Took weeks. Eden watched the horse, seeing the same restless energy that characterized Wade. Can I tell you something? Jeb asked suddenly. About Mr. Kestrel? Eden nodded. He wasn't always like this. The old hands say he was different before. Before what? Jeb glanced around, ensuring they were alone. Before Clara. Who's Clara? His wife. They married young, maybe 8 years ago. She was the daughter of another rancher. Pretty as a spring morning, but she wasn't happy here. Red Mesa was too isolated, too rough for her. She wanted parties and society, things Mr. Kestrel couldn't give her. Eden waited, sensing there was more. She took up with a gambler from San Antonio. When Mr. Kestrel found out, Jeb shook his head. He killed the man, shot him right there in the street in front of everyone. Clara left that same day, went back east. The divorce papers came a month later. He wasn't tried for murder? Self-defense, they called it. The gambler went for his gun first. But everyone knew the truth. No one draws on Wade Kestrel and lives. Jeb's voice dropped. After that, he changed, became what he is now, built his empire, made his fortune. But something in him died with that gambler. Eden thought of Wade's words the night before, about needing her to keep him human. Was that what he'd meant? That he'd lost some essential part of himself and was trying to find it again? As they headed back to the house, they encountered a group of riders coming in from the range. Wade was at their head, covered in dust, his face grim. His eyes found Eden immediately, narrowing as he took in her presence outside the house with Jeb. "Morrison," he said coldly, "don't you have work to do?" "Yes, sir." Jeb tipped his hat to Eden and hurried away. Wade dismounted, handing Tempest's reins to another hand. "I don't recall giving you permission to tour the property." "I asked her to walk with me," Jeb called back, brave in his defense. "Thought she should know her way around." Wade's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more to Jeb. To Eden, he said, "Inside." She followed him into the house, her earlier peace shattered. In the entrance hall, he rounded on her. "You were with my mother?" "Yes, all morning. Rosa showed me." "Good. That's what you're here for." His eyes raked over her, taking in the dress that hung loose on her frame. "Rosa will take you to town tomorrow for proper clothes. You can't walk around looking like a charity case." The words stung, but Eden held her tongue. Wade started up the stairs, then paused. "You'll dine with me tonight. 7 o'clock in the dining room. Rosa will show you where." It wasn't a request. That evening, Eden found herself sitting across from Wade at a table that could have seated 20. Candles flickered between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Wade had bathed and changed, his dark hair still damp, his clothes immaculate. He looked like a different man from the dusty rancher who'd ridden in that afternoon. They ate in silence for several minutes. The food was excellent. Rosa had outdone herself, but Eden could barely taste it. Finally, Wade spoke. "Tell me about my mother. How did she seem today?" Surprised by the question, Eden answered honestly. "Alert, interested in the reading. She tried to speak once, but I couldn't understand." Wade's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "She always loved books. Before she got sick, she'd read for hours, poetry especially. There's a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets by her bed. I gave her that for her birthday 10 years ago." He took a drink of wine, his eyes distant. "She wanted me to go to university. Wanted me to be educated, refined. Instead, I built this place with my hands and my gun. She seems proud of you," Eden ventured. Wade's laugh was bitter. "Proud? She's seen what I've become. What I've had to become to keep this place, to build it into what it is. That's not pride in her eyes. It's resignation." Eden didn't know what to say to that, so she remained silent. "You spoke with Morrison today," Wade said, changing the subject. "What did he tell you?" Eden felt a chill. How much should she admit? He showed me around the ranch. And? She met his gaze steadily. And he told me you're fair to your men, that you hired him when he had nowhere else to go. Something flickered in Wade's eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Is that all? Eden made a choice. Yes. Wade studied her for a long moment, and she had the feeling he knew she was lying but chose not to pursue it. Morrison's a good kid, he said finally. Too soft for this life, but he works hard. His gaze sharpened. Don't get too friendly with him. Eden, or any of the men, it would be misunderstood. The implication was clear. She was Wade's, and everyone must know it. After dinner, Wade walked her to her room. At the door, he caught her arm, his touch sending an unwelcome shiver through her. You did well today, he said. With my mother. She needs someone like you, someone who doesn't pity her. I don't pity her, Eden said truthfully. She's still herself, just trapped. Wade's hand tightened on her arm. Yes, trapped. He seemed to be talking about more than his mother. Then he released her and stepped back. Good night, Eden. She slipped into her room, heart racing. She'd expected him to follow, to demand what he'd claimed the night before, but she heard his footsteps moving away down the hall. That night, Eden lay awake for hours, trying to understand the man who now controlled her fate. He was cruel and kind by turns, cold yet capable of unexpected warmth when speaking of his mother or even Jeb. He'd killed for pride and passion, yet he'd taken in a starving boy and given him work. What had Jeb said? That something in Wade had died with that gambler. But Eden wondered if it wasn't dead, just buried deep, protected by layers of ice and iron. And for some reason she couldn't fathom, Wade had decided she was the key to finding it again. The moon was setting when she finally heard footsteps in the hall. They paused outside her door, and she held her breath. But after a long moment, they continued on, somewhere in the house. A door closed quietly. Eden released her breath slowly. Another night's reprieve, but she knew it wouldn't last. Wade Kestrel was not a patient man, and he hadn't paid $300 for a nurse for his mother. Tomorrow, she would face whatever came, but tonight, she was grateful for the silence, for the space to gather her courage, because she was beginning to understand that surviving at Red Mesa would require more than just endurance. It would require her to navigate the dangerous currents of Wade Kestrel's wounded heart without drowning in the process. 2 weeks had passed since Eden's arrival at Red Mesa when Wade announced at breakfast that they would be traveling to town for the funeral of Judge Theodore Morrison. Old Ted was one of the few honest judges in this territory, Wade said, his voice carefully neutral. It's only proper we pay our respects. Eden noticed how he said we as if it were natural, as if she belonged at his side in public. The prospect filled her with dread. Should I stay with Mrs. Kestrel? She asked hopefully. Rosa will tend to her. You'll come with me. His tone brooked no argument. Wear the green dress Rosa altered for you. We leave in an hour. The ride to Dry Hollow took them past familiar landmarks that made Eden's chest tight. She hadn't expected to see the town again so soon, certainly not arriving in Wade's fine carriage, dressed in silk instead of worn calico. Wade sat beside her in silence, dressed in a black suit that made him look even more formidable than usual. His jaw was clean-shaven, his boots polished to a high shine. He looked every inch the prosperous rancher, a pillar of the community. Only Eden knew the darkness that lurked beneath that respectable facade. As they entered town, heads turned. Eden saw the moment recognition dawned on familiar faces. The minister's wife, the schoolteacher, women she'd known all her life. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to shock to something worse, scandalized judgment. Lift your chin, Wade said quietly. You're with me now. Act like it. Eden straightened her spine, but she couldn't stop the heat rising in her cheeks as whispers followed their progress down Main Street. The church was crowded, the august heat making the air thick and close. Wade guided her to a pew near the middle, his hand at her elbow, proprietary and impossible to misinterpret. Eden felt the weight of dozens of stares boring into her back. Throughout the service, She was painfully aware of the speculation surrounding them. She caught fragments of whispered conversation. Sold her like cattle. What else would you expect from Sam Briggs? Poor girl. But then again, she seems to have landed well. Not his wife. I heard. After the service, mourners gathered outside for the procession to the cemetery. Wade was immediately approached by several men, ranchers and businessmen who treated him with wary respect. Eden stood slightly behind him, trying to become invisible. Kestrel, a heavy-set man with mutton chop whiskers, greeted Wade. Didn't expect to see you here. Judge Morrison was a fair man. Hutchinson, that's rare enough to warrant respect. Hutchinson's eyes slid to Eden, curiosity naked in his gaze. And this young lady? Miss Carter, Wade said smoothly, offering no further explanation. The lack of a proper introduction, no mention of her as his wife, fiancée, or even ward, spoke volumes. Eden saw understanding dawn in Hutchinson's eyes, followed by a knowing smirk that made her stomach turn. Miss Carter, Hutchinson repeated, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. Charming. As they moved through the crowd, the pattern repeated. Wade introduced her simply as Miss Carter, and each time, Eden saw the same progression of reactions: curiosity, realization, judgment. She was neither respectable nor completely fallen, existing in some shameful space between. Near the cemetery gates, a woman's voice called out, "Wade! Wade Kestrel!" They turned to see an elegant woman in morning dress approaching. She was perhaps 30, with rich auburn hair and striking green eyes. Everything about her spoke of refinement and money, from her perfectly tailored dress to her delicate leather gloves. "Lila," Wade said, and Eden heard something in his voice she hadn't before, surprise mixed with old pain. "I couldn't believe it when I heard you were here," Lila said, stopping just close enough to be proper, just far enough to maintain distance. "You never come to town functions anymore. Judge Morrison was worth making an exception for." Lila's gaze shifted to Eden, taking in every detail with the swift assessment of a woman sizing up potential competition. "And you've brought a companion." "Miss Carter," Wade said. "Eden, this is Mrs. Lila Thornton." Thornton. Eden recognized the name, the deputy sheriff's wife, but there was history here, thick as smoke between Wade and this polished woman. "Miss Carter," Lila repeated thoughtfully. "I don't believe we've met, and I know everyone in the county. Are you visiting from elsewhere?" "No," Eden said quietly. "I'm from Dry Hollow." "Really?" Lila's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How interesting. And how did you come to know Mr. Kestrel?" Eden felt Wade tense beside her, but before he could intervene, she found her voice. "Mr. Kestrel was kind enough to offer me a position at Red Mesa. I help care for his mother." "Oh, a nurse. How wonderful. Dear Judith needs all the care she can get." Lila's tone was honeyed poison. "Though I must say, you're rather young for such responsibility. And living at the ranch, no less, how unconventional." "These aren't conventional times," Wade said coldly. "If you'll excuse us, Mrs. Thornton." But Lila wasn't finished. "I do hope you'll come for dinner soon. Wade, James would love to discuss the water rights situation with you. And of course, Miss Carter is welcome too." She paused delicately. "If that would be appropriate." The insult was elegantly delivered but unmistakable. Eden felt her cheeks burn. "We'll see," Wade said, already steering Eden away. As they walked toward the gravesite, Eden whispered, "She was the one, wasn't she? Your fiancée before—" Wade's jaw tightened. "That was a long time ago." "She's very beautiful." "Beauty isn't everything." His hand found the small of her back, the touch possessive. Lila got exactly what she wanted, a respectable husband, a fine house in town, social standing. Let her choke on it. The bitterness in his voice was sharp as alkali. Eden wondered if he knew how much pain still bled through his words. The graveside service was mercifully brief. As the mourners began to disperse, an elderly woman approached them. Eden recognized her as Mrs. Abernathy, who ran the general store with her husband. "Eden Carter," she said, her voice kind but sad. "I wondered what had become of you after." She glanced at Wade and didn't finish. "I'm well, Mrs. Abernathy," Eden said softly. "Thank you for asking." The old woman studied her with knowing eyes. "You were always a good girl, I hope." Again, she stopped, seeming to think better of what she'd been about to say. "You take care of yourself, child." As she walked away, Wade said, "You knew her?" "She gave me penny candy sometimes when I was young, when my mother was still alive." They were quiet on the ride back to the hotel where Wade had taken rooms for the night. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Eden stared out the window, trying to reconcile the girl who'd received charity candy with the woman wearing silk beside a dangerous man. At the hotel, Wade ordered dinner sent to their suite, 2 rooms connected by a sitting area. Eden was grateful to be away from prying eyes, but the intimacy of the private space brought new anxieties. They ate in relative silence until Wade poured himself a whiskey and stood by the window, looking out at the darkening street. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, "for today, for what you had to endure." Eden looked up in surprise. "You're apologizing? You didn't deserve that. The whispers, the looks, Lila's venom." He took a long drink. "But you handled it well. Better than I expected." "Did I have a choice?" He turned to face her. "There's always a choice. You could have corrected them, told them you were forced, sold against your will, made me the villain of the piece. Would it have changed anything? They'd already made up their minds about what I am. And what are you, Eden?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Eden rose, moving to pour herself a small glass of wine. Liquid courage. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "Not a wife, not a mistress, not exactly a servant. I'm something without a name, aren't I? Something that doesn't fit in their neat little categories." Wade watched her with those storm-gray eyes. "Does that bother you? Shouldn't it? I've lost my name, my reputation, any chance at a respectable life, all because Sam Briggs preferred cards to responsibility." "You have a name," Wade said quietly. "You're Eden Carter of Red Mesa. That means something in this territory. It means I'm yours," Eden said, the wine making her bold. "Bought and paid for, they all know it." Wade crossed to her in 3 strides, taking the glass from her hand and setting it aside. "Is that what you think? That you're just property to me? Aren't I?" His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "If you were just property, I wouldn't care what they said. I wouldn't have wanted to put a bullet in Hutchinson for the way he looked at you. I wouldn't have felt sick watching you face down their judgment with more grace than any of them deserve. Then what am I to you?" Instead of answering, he kissed her. Not like the first night, brutal and claiming. This was different, slower, tinged with something that might have been regret. When thunder crashed overhead and rain began to pound against the windows, he pulled her closer, as if the storm outside had awakened something equally wild within him. Later, as Eden lay in the dark, listening to the rain, Wade spoke into the silence. "I killed a man for her, for Lila." Eden turned to look at his profile in the darkness. "Not the gambler, that came later. The first one was when we were engaged. Some drifter made an inappropriate comment about her at a dance. I called him out, and he was dead before sunrise." His voice was emotionless, relating facts. "Lila was horrified. Said I was a savage, that she couldn't marry a man who solved problems with violence. But she came back. She always came back, until she didn't." "You loved her." "I thought I did. But love shouldn't make you worse. Should it? With her, I was always trying to be something I wasn't, refined, civilized, tame, and failing. Always failing." Eden thought about that as the storm raged outside. "Maybe you weren't failing. Maybe you were just with the wrong person." Wade's laugh was soft and bitter. "And you think you're the right person? A girl I bought from a drunk for $300? The words should have hurt, but Eden heard the self-mockery in them, the way he was punishing himself more than her. "I think," she said carefully. That we're both broken in different ways. And maybe that's why you brought me to Red Mesa, not because you needed a nurse for your mother or a woman in your bed, but because you recognized something in me. Another soul trying to survive despite the damage. Wade was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, when I saw you that morning in Dry Hollow, you looked defeated but not broken, scared but not cowering, and I thought— He trailed off. What did you think? I thought maybe you were strong enough to survive me, to survive this life. Most women aren't. Eden closed her eyes against the strange ache in her chest. I'm surviving so far. Yes, Wade said softly. You are. The storm eventually passed, leaving the night clean and cool. They rose early for the journey back to Red Mesa, the awkwardness of morning after settling between them. But as they left Dry Hollow behind, Eden felt something had shifted. She'd faced the worst, the judgment, the whispers, the knowledge of what everyone thought her to be. And she'd survived it. More than that, she'd glimpsed something beneath Wade's harsh exterior, a man still bleeding from old wounds, still fighting battles he'd already lost. He'd bought her. Yes, but perhaps he needed saving just as much as she did. As Red Mesa came into view, that sprawling testament to one man's iron will, Eden made a decision. She couldn't change what had brought her here, but she could choose what happened next. She could choose to be more than just a purchased companion, more than a victim of circumstance. She could choose to find her own power in this strange half-life between respectability and ruin. And maybe, just maybe, she could help Wade Kestrel remember what it meant to be human in the process. The gates of Red Mesa opened before them, and Eden straightened her spine. Whatever came next, she would meet it with her chin raised. She was Eden Carter of Red Mesa now, and that would have to be enough. The change began subtly in the weeks following their return from Dry Hollow. Wade no longer came to Eden's room with the cold purpose of that first night. Instead, he would appear at odd hours. Sometimes at dusk when the sky bled crimson over the grasslands. Sometimes in the deep of night when thunder rolled across the plains. He would stay afterward, a silent presence in the darkness, occasionally sharing fragments of thought like a man slowly learning to trust. Eden found herself anticipating these visits with a confusion of emotions she didn't care to examine too closely. Fear had given way to something more complex, a recognition of mutual need. Perhaps, or simply the human desire for connection in this vast, lonely place. One evening in early September, Eden sat with Judith, reading from a collection of Emily Dickinson that had arrived in a package from the East. The older woman's eyes were particularly alert, following every word with an intensity that suggested comprehension beyond her physical limitations. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, Eden read softly, and sings the tune without the words, and never stops at all. Judith's good hand reached out. Grasping Eden's with surprising strength, her lips moved, forming silent words. Eden had learned to read some of these attempts at communication, and she thought Judith was trying to say, "You?" "Me?" Eden asked. "I don't understand." Judith's eyes moved meaningfully toward the door, then back to Eden. Her hand squeezed again, insistent. "You mean, I'm Hope, for Wade." A tear rolled down Judith's cheek as she nodded slightly. The effort seemed to exhaust her, and she closed her eyes. Eden continued reading, but her mind wandered. How could she be anyone's hope when she felt so lost herself? Yet she couldn't deny that Wade had changed since her arrival. The men spoke of it in whispers, how he seemed less quick to anger, how he'd actually smiled the other day when one of the younger hands had told a joke. That evening, Wade didn't appear for dinner. Rosa mentioned he was working late in his study, going over the ranch accounts. Eden ate alone, then found herself walking down the hallway to the closed door of his study. She knocked softly. "Come." Wade sat behind a massive oak desk, papers spread before him, a lamp casting golden light over his features. He looked tired, older than his years. "You missed dinner," Eden said. "I'm not hungry." He didn't look up from his ledgers. Eden moved into the room, studying the space she'd never entered before. The walls were lined with books. Surprising her, she hadn't taken Wade for a reader. A painting hung behind the desk depicting Red Mesa in its early days, little more than a cabin and a dream. "Your mother had a good day," she offered. "She was very alert." Good. Still, he didn't look up. Eden felt dismissed but didn't leave. Instead, she moved to examine the books. Many were practical: cattle breeding, land management, territorial law, but there was poetry too, philosophy, even a few novels. "You're surprised," Wade said, and she realized he was watching her now. "You don't seem the type for Wordsworth." "My mother's influence. She insisted I read more than cattle prices and weather reports." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What do you want, Eden?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. I don't know. You seem troubled. I thought—" "You thought to comfort me?" His smile was sardonic. "And how would you do that?" Eden felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Not like that. We live in the same house, share the same—" She stopped, unable to define what they shared. Wade rose and came around the desk, moving with the controlled grace she'd come to recognize as uniquely his. He stopped just out of reach, and she could smell the leather and tobacco scent that clung to him. "Today marks 8 years," he said quietly. Since I killed Marcus Bright, Lila's gambler." He moved to pour himself a whiskey from a decanter on a side table. "September 15th, 1875, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Main Street, right in front of Donnelly's saloon." Eden waited, sensing he needed to tell this story. He was drunk, boasting about his conquest, describing details, things no man should say about any woman, let alone one who'd been promised to another. Wade's knuckles whitened around the glass. "I called him out. He went for his gun. I was faster." It sounds like he deserved it. Wade's laugh was harsh. "Did he? For being a fool in love? For winning what I couldn't hold?" He drained the whiskey. "I told myself it was about honor, but it was pride, pure, savage pride, and Lila knew it." "Is that why she left?" "She left because she saw what I really was. Not the civilized rancher I pretended to be, but a man who solved problems with violence, who always would." He turned to face her. "And she was right. Look at us. I bought you because I could. Because in this territory, money and power mean you can purchase anything, even people." Eden moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. "But you're not cruel. You could be much worse. Is that supposed to be a comfort? That I'm not as monstrous as I could be?" He set down the glass with too much force. "You defend me, but why? Stockholm Syndrome? Or have you simply accepted your fate?" The accusation stung. "Maybe I see something you don't. Maybe I see a man trying to be better than his worst impulses." "And what makes you think that?" "Because a truly cruel man wouldn't care, wouldn't mark the anniversary of his sins, wouldn't speak of them with such regret." She was close enough now to touch him, but didn't. "You're punishing yourself more than anyone else ever could." Wade stared at her, something raw and vulnerable flickering in his eyes. Then he pulled her against him, not roughly, but with a desperate need that spoke of loneliness deeper than the grave. "I dream about it sometimes," he whispered against her hair. "The sound the body made hitting the dirt, the way Lila looked at me after, like I was a stranger wearing familiar skin." Eden wrapped her arms around him, offering what comfort she could. "We all have our ghosts. Wade, what are yours?" She thought of her mother, dying slowly while Sam drank away their money. Of the nights she'd lain awake wondering if she'd ever be more than a burden to be sold. Too many to count. They stood like that for a long moment, two damaged souls finding solace in shared brokenness. Then Wade pulled back, his walls rebuilding themselves. "Jeb tells me you've been learning to shoot." The change of subject was abrupt but not unexpected. "He's a good teacher. Show me tomorrow, after breakfast." It wasn't a request, but Eden heard something else in it, an invitation to share part of his world beyond the bedroom and sick room. The next morning dawned clear and cool, autumn beginning to edge out summer's heat. Eden met Wade at the small shooting range the hands had set up behind the stables. He carried a Winchester rifle and a Colt .45, both well-maintained but showing signs of use. "Have you ever killed anything?" he asked as he showed her how to load the rifle. "Chickens for dinner. A rattlesnake once that got too close to the house." "It's different with larger game, or men." He positioned her arms, adjusting her stance. "You have to mean it. Hesitation will get you killed." His hands on her shoulders were steady, patient. This was a different Wade, a teacher rather than a master. He showed her how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger, how to brace for the recoil. Her first shots went wide, but Wade didn't criticize. He simply adjusted her position and had her try again. By the 10th shot, she was hitting the target consistently, if not accurately. "Better," he said. "You're not afraid of the gun. That's good. Should I be? You should respect it, but fear makes you stupid." He took the rifle, demonstrating with casual expertise. 3 shots, 3 perfect bullseyes. In this country, knowing how to defend yourself isn't optional. Too many things want to kill you: weather, animals, men. "Is that why you're teaching me? So I can defend myself?" Wade lowered the rifle, his expression unreadable. "I'm teaching you because you're mine to protect, and I won't always be there." The possessiveness should have rankled, but Eden heard the worry beneath it. "You think something's going to happen?" "Something always happens. That's the nature of this life." He handed her the Colt. "This is better for close range, easier to handle." The pistol was heavier than she expected, but it fit her hand well. Wade stood behind her, his chest against her back, guiding her arms. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. "Breathe," he murmured. "In, hold, squeeze on the exhale." She fired, the recoil jarring but manageable. The tin can target flew off its post. "Natural talent," Wade said, and she could hear approval in his voice. "We'll practice every morning. In a month, you'll be competent. In 6 months, dangerous. And then you'll be a true woman of the frontier, worth more than any hothouse flower who'd wilt at the first sign of trouble." Eden heard the bitterness when he spoke of delicate women and understood. Lila had been beautiful, but fragile, unable to survive the harsh realities of Wade's world. He was making sure Eden would be different, stronger, capable of standing beside him rather than sheltering behind him. That afternoon, while Eden sat with Judith, they had an unexpected visitor. Lila Thornton arrived in a fancy buggy, dressed impeccably despite the dust of travel. Rosa showed her to Judith's room with obvious reluctance. "Mrs. Kestrel?" Lila said warmly, though her eyes were on Eden. "I've come to pay my respects. I've been terribly remiss in not visiting sooner." Judith's expression remained neutral, but Eden sensed the older woman's dislike. Still, hospitality demanded courtesy. "Would you like some tea?" Eden offered. "How kind." Lila settled herself in the chair usually reserved for Eden, forcing her to stand awkwardly by the window. "You know, I used to sit with Mrs. Kestrel quite often, before." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Before Eden, before the breaking of old ties. "She's a wonderful woman," Eden said carefully. "I've learned so much from her." "Yes, I imagine you're learning all sorts of things at Red Mesa." Lila's smile was sharp as glass. "It must be quite an adjustment from your previous circumstances." Eden felt her spine stiffen. "Every life has its adjustments. Indeed, though some are more dramatic than others." Lila turned to Judith with false concern. "You must worry. Having such a young woman in the house with Wade, men can be so impulsive." Judith's good hand clenched in her lap. Her eyes flashed with anger. "Mrs. Kestrel seems pleased with the arrangement," Eden said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "As does Mr. Kestrel." "Oh, I'm sure Wade is very pleased." Lila's laugh tinkled like broken china. He always did have an eye for potential. Eden understood then why Lila had really come. Not to visit Judith, but to stake some sort of claim. To remind Eden of her place. The woman Wade had loved versus the girl he'd bought. "You must have many responsibilities as the deputy sheriff's wife," Eden said. "How kind of you to make time for this visit." It was a dismissal, politely delivered but unmistakable. Lila's eyes narrowed. "Yes, James does keep me busy. All those social obligations, charity work, the sort of things a proper wife does." She rose, smoothing her skirts. "I should go, but Eden, may I call you Eden? If you ever need anything, please know you can come to me. I understand how difficult your position must be." After she left, Eden sank into the vacated chair, shaking with suppressed emotion. Judith reached out, patting her hand comfortingly. "Which?" Eden muttered, then caught herself. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't speak ill of your guests." But Judith shook her head emphatically. Her lips moved. "Good girl." Wade appeared in the doorway as if summoned. "I saw the buggy leaving. Lila?" Eden nodded, not trusting her voice. His jaw tightened. "What did she want?" "To remind me of my place. I think, to make sure I knew I was just the hired help." Wade crossed the room in 3 strides, tilting Eden's chin up to meet his eyes. "You're not the hired help. Then what am I?" "Mine," he said simply. "And that means more than any title she can claim." That night, he came to her room earlier than usual. There was an edge to him, a restlessness that filled the space. When he kissed her, she tasted whiskey and something else. Possession, perhaps, or the need to erase Lila's presence from his house. "She had no right to come here," he said against her throat. "No right to speak to you that way. She still loves you." Wade pulled back. "No, she loves the idea of me, the man she thought she could make me into. When she realized that man didn't exist, she settled for Thornton and his badge." His hands framed her face. "But you've never tried to change me." "Why?" Eden thought about it. "Because I'm not trying to save you. We're past salvation, both of us. All we can do is survive." Together. The question surprised them both. Eden saw the moment Wade realized what he'd implied, saw him start to pull away. She caught his hands, holding them in place. "Together," she agreed softly. They came together then with a different energy than before, not the desperate coupling of their early encounters or the gentle comfort of recent nights, but something deeper, a claiming that went both ways. When Wade held her afterward, his arms tight around her as if she might disappear, Eden understood that something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer just the girl he'd bought. She was the woman he'd chosen, and for the first time since that morning in Dry Hollow when her world had ended, Eden began to believe it might be possible to build something new from the ashes. Not a conventional life, not a respectable one by society's standards, but something real and fierce and theirs. Outside. A wolf howled in the distance, and its mate answered. Wade's arms tightened around her, and Eden smiled into the darkness. Let Lila have her sheriff and her social calls and her proper marriage. Eden had something worth more. A man who'd shown her his demons and trusted her not to run. Tomorrow, she would practice shooting again. She would read to Judith and help Rosa with the household. She would continue learning what it meant to be a woman of Red Mesa, strong enough to stand beside Wade Kestrel in all his complicated darkness. But tonight, she was simply Eden, holding and held by a man who needed her as much as she needed him. And for now, that was enough. The decision to leave came to Eden on a gray October morning when the first frost silvered the grasslands. She stood at her window watching Wade ride out with his men, his figure disappearing into the mist like a ghost. The past weeks had been the happiest of her time at Red Mesa, but happiness built on such foundations felt fragile as spun glass. She loved him. The realization had crept up slowly, inevitable as sunrise. Not the desperate, grasping love of novels, but something quieter and more terrifying, a recognition of souls. But what future could such love have when she remained a purchased woman? Neither wife nor truly free. Eden packed quietly, taking only what she'd brought and leaving behind the fine dresses Rosa had altered for her. She wrote a letter for Judith, her hand trembling as she formed the words. Dear Mrs. Kestrel, you have become the mother I lost too young. Leaving you is the hardest part of this, but I cannot stay. Not because your son has been cruel. He has shown me more kindness than I dared hope, but because I need to know who I am when I'm not defined by who owns me. Please understand. Take care of him. All my love, Eden. She slipped out before dawn the next day, taking one of the gentler horses from the stable. The ranch was quiet, the hands still asleep in the bunkhouse. Only the wind witnessed her departure. Eden had gotten perhaps 5 miles from Red Mesa when she realized her mistake. 3 riders emerged from a stand of cottonwoods, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. She recognized the leader, Jack Holloway, a man Wade had dismissed from the ranch months ago for rustling cattle. Well, Holloway drawled, his gap-toothed grin making Eden's skin crawl. Wade Kestrel's pretty bird, flying the coop. Let me pass, Eden said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm no concern of yours. Oh, but you are. See, Kestrel cost me my job, my reputation. Man can't get honest work anywhere in the territory now. He spat tobacco juice. But you're worth something to him, ain't you? His bought woman, warming his bed. Eden's hand moved toward the rifle in her saddle scabbard, but Holloway was faster. He grabbed her horse's bridle, yanking hard. The animal reared, and Eden tumbled to the ground, the breath knocked from her lungs. Figured we'd send Kestrel a message, Holloway continued as his companions dismounted. Let him know what happens when you cross the wrong people. You're gonna help us with that, sweetheart. They bound her hands and threw her across Holloway's saddle like a sack of grain. Eden bit her tongue to keep from crying out, tasting blood. They rode hard toward the Badlands, to a ramshackle cabin hidden in a box canyon. Inside, the cabin reeked of unwashed men and rot-gut whiskey. They tied her to a chair, and Holloway produced a grimy piece of paper. You're gonna write Kestrel a note, he said. Tell him if he wants you back. It'll cost him, let's say, $5,000. He won't pay that, Eden said. I'm nobody. Just a girl he bought from a drunk. Holloway backhanded her, splitting her lip. Don't sell yourself short. I've seen how he looks at you. Man like that, all pride and possession, he'll pay. Eden wrote the note with shaking hands, her own blood spotting the paper. Holloway sent one of his men to deliver it, then settled in to wait, drinking steadily from a brown bottle. Shame, really, he mused, studying Eden with whiskey-bright eyes. Pretty thing like you, wasted on that cold bastard. Maybe after we get the money, we'll show you what real men are like. Eden closed her eyes, Wade's lessons echoing in her mind. Don't show fear. Fear makes you stupid. She tested her bonds carefully. The rope was new, tight, no give there, but the chair was old, the wood split with age, at Red Mesa. Wade returned from the range to find the household in uproar. Rosa met him at the door, tears streaming down her face. She's gone. The señorita, she left a letter for your mother and disappeared. Jeb says one of the horses is missing. Wade took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into his mother's room. Judith was more agitated than he'd seen her since her stroke, trying to speak, her good hand gesturing frantically. The letter, Rosa said, handing it to him. Wade read Eden's words, each one a knife between his ribs. She'd left him, after everything. She'd chosen freedom over... What? What had he offered her besides captivity dressed in silk? Senor. Jeb appeared in the doorway, breathless. Rider coming in fast, not one of ours. Wade was already moving, his hand on his gun before conscious thought. In the yard, a stranger dismounted, keeping his hands visible. Message for Wade Kestrel, the man said. From Jack Holloway. The name hit Wade like ice water. He snatched the note, recognizing Eden's handwriting. Seeing the blood, the words blurred, but he caught the essentials. Holloway, $5,000. Come alone. When? His voice was deadly quiet. Sunset, Box Canyon. You know the place. The messenger backed toward his horse. He says come alone, or the girl dies. Wade let him go, his mind already working. Holloway was a fool and a coward, but he was also desperate. Desperate men did stupid, terrible things. I'll gather the men, Jeb said. No. Wade was already heading for the house. He said alone. That's suicide. You know it's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Wade took the stairs to his study, Jeb trailing behind. He opened the safe, pulling out stacks of bills. But he has something that belongs to me. Boss, think about this. We can surround the canyon, take them by surprise. Wade spun, grabbing Jeb by the collar. He has Eden. Do you understand? Every minute we waste planning is another minute she's with them. He released the younger man, his control fraying. I won't risk her. You love her. It wasn't a question. Wade laughed, short and bitter. Love? I destroyed her life. Jeb bought her like cattle, kept her prisoner, ruined any chance she had at happiness. The least I can do is get her out of this. He strapped on his gun belt, checked his rifle, pocketed the money. At the door, he paused. If I don't come back, the ranch goes to my mother and then to Eden. It's all in the will. Make sure Thornton doesn't contest it. Wade. But he was already gone, spurring Tempest toward the Badlands as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. In the cabin, Eden had worked one chair leg loose. She just needed time. Opportunity. Holloway was deep in his cups now, his two companions playing cards by lamplight. Outside, she could hear thunder rumbling. Boss should have heard by now. One of the men muttered. He'll come, Holloway slurred. Man like Kestrel. All that pride, he'll come. The door crashed open, and Wade stood silhouetted against the storm. Water streamed from his duster, and his eyes were wild as a rabid wolf's. His gaze found Eden immediately, taking in her split lip, the ropes, the way she held herself carefully still. Let her go, he said. I brought your money. Holloway lurched to his feet, gun wavering in Wade's general direction. Throw it on the table, and your guns. Wade complied, his movements careful and deliberate. The money made an impressive pile. His gun belt followed, then the rifle. Now step back. Wade moved away from the table, closer to Eden. She could see him cataloging the room, the positions of the men, looking for angles. But Holloway wasn't that drunk. Ah, he waggled the gun. Stay put. Kestrel, boys, count the money. As the men greedily pawed through the bills, Wade spoke quietly to Eden. Are you hurt? No, she whispered. Wade, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have run. Touching, Holloway interrupted. The cattle baron and his whore reunited. He gestured with the gun. Here's what's going to happen. We're taking the money and the girl. You can have her back when we're safe in Mexico. Maybe. That wasn't the deal. Deals changed. Holloway grinned. See, I got to thinking. Why settle for $5,000 when Kestrel here would probably pay 10, 20? Sky's the limit when a man's in love. Wade went very still, and Eden recognized the danger in that stillness. This was the man who'd killed for pride, who'd built an empire on will and violence. You're making a mistake, Wade said softly. Only mistake I made was not killing you when... Eden kicked out hard, the loose chair leg finally giving way. She toppled backward just as Wade dove for his gun. The cabin erupted in chaos. Shouts, gunfire, the crash of the table overturning. Through the melee, Eden saw Wade moving with lethal grace, his gun speaking death. One man down, then two, but Holloway had grabbed Eden, using her as a shield, his gun pressed to her temple. Drop it, he screamed. Drop it or I'll paint the wall with her brains. Wade froze, his gun trained on Holloway but unable to get a clear shot. You kill her, you die, Wade said simply. No money, no Mexico, just you and me and blood. Maybe that's enough, Holloway snarled. Maybe watching you lose her is worth... The gunshot was impossibly loud in the small space. Eden felt Holloway jerk, his grip loosening. She twisted away as he fell, revealing Jeb in the doorway. Smoking rifle in hand. Sorry, boss, Jeb said. I know you said come alone, but... Wade was already cutting Eden's bonds, his hands shaking. "You came back," she whispered. "I'll always come back for you," he said roughly. "Always." She threw her arms around him, and for a moment they just held each other while the storm raged outside and death cooled on the cabin floor. "Why did you run?" Wade asked against her hair. "Because I'm a coward. Because I was afraid of of what I felt. Because I needed to know if I had a choice." "And do you?" Eden pulled back to look at him. Blood from a graze marked his cheek, and his eyes held too much pain. "Yes," she said simply. "And I choose you. I choose Red Mesa. I choose this life, whatever it is." Wade kissed her then, desperate and claiming, while Jeb politely studied the ceiling. They rode back through the storm, Eden secure in Wade's arms atop Tempest. The rain washed away the blood and fear, leaving only the essential truth. They belonged to each other now, not through purchase or obligation, but through choice. At Red Mesa, Rosa fussed over Eden's injuries while Wade paced like a caged cat. Finally, he sent everyone away and knelt beside her chair. "Marry me," he said abruptly. Eden blinked. "What? Marry me. Make it real, legal. Not because I bought you or because you have nowhere else to go, but because—" He struggled with the words. "Because when I thought I might lose you, I realized I'd rather die than live without you. Because you make me remember who I was before I became what I am. Because I love you, Eden Carter, and I want the world to know it." Eden touched his face gently, feeling the wetness there that wasn't from the rain. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Wade Kestrel. I'll marry you. But not because you saved me today, because you save me every day, just by being who you are." They held each other as the storm passed and stars emerged, marking the end of one story and the beginning of another. Eden had run seeking freedom and found something better, a love worth choosing, worth fighting for, worth claiming before the world. Tomorrow there would be questions, plans, a future to build. But tonight, she was home. The days following Eden's rescue passed in a blur of activity and emotion. Wade barely left her side, as if afraid she might vanish like morning mist. He insisted Doc Harmon examine her thoroughly, hovering anxiously while the elderly physician tended her split lip and bruised wrists. "She'll be fine, Kestrel," Doc Harmon said with barely concealed amusement. "Though if you keep pacing like that, I might have to treat you for apoplexy." Wade's response was a growl that made the doctor chuckle and Eden hide a smile. But beneath the surface of recovery, the household felt the weight of another concern. Judith's condition had worsened dramatically during the crisis. The agitation of Eden's disappearance seemed to have drained what little strength remained. She lay still now, her breathing shallow, her eyes often closed. Eden spent every possible moment at Judith's bedside, reading aloud even when the older woman showed no sign of awareness. Wade joined them in the evenings, sitting silent in the shadows, watching the two women who had become his world. One afternoon, as October rain drummed against the windows, Judith's eyes opened with a sudden clarity. She looked from Eden to Wade, and her lips moved with determined effort. "What is it, Mother?" Wade leaned close, his voice gentler than Eden had ever heard it. "Mar." Judith struggled with the word, frustration flashing in her eyes. "Marry?" Eden guessed softly. "You want us to marry?" Judith's good hand squeezed Eden's with surprising strength, her eyes bright with urgency. "We will," Wade assured her. "As soon as you're stronger." But Judith shook her head emphatically. Her gaze moved to the window, then back to them, and Eden understood. "She wants us to marry now," Eden said quietly, "while she can still see it." Wade's jaw tightened. "Mother, you need to rest, to save your strength." "Please," Judith managed, the single word clear as a bell. It was the first complete word she'd spoken since her stroke, and the effort left her gasping. Wade looked at Eden, and she saw her own realization mirrored in his eyes. Time was running out. "I'll send for Reverend Morrison," Wade said roughly. "He can be here by evening." The afternoon became a whirlwind of preparation. Rosa, tears streaming down her face, pressed Eden's best dress and pinned up her hair with trembling fingers. Jeb rode hard for town to fetch the Reverend and what witnesses could be gathered quickly. The ranch hands cleaned up as best they could, understanding the gravity of the moment, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Eden stood before the mirror in her room. The green silk dress, the one Wade had insisted she wear to Judge Morrison's funeral, had been carefully mended where it had torn during her ordeal. Her lip was still slightly swollen, and faint bruises marked her wrists, but her eyes were bright with emotion. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Wade entered, dressed in his finest black suit, looking both formidable and vulnerable. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Not like this, rushed and without proper preparation. You deserve better. A real wedding, with flowers and guests and—" Eden crossed to him, placing her fingers against his lips. "I'm marrying you, Wade Kestrel, not a party, and your mother wants to see it. That's all that matters." He caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek. "How did I find you? How did someone like you end up in my life?" "You bought me from a drunk for $300. Eden reminded him with a slight smile. "Not exactly a fairy tale beginning." "No," Wade agreed, his eyes dark with memory. "But maybe that's better. We know the worst of each other, the ugly beginnings. Everything from here can only be better." They made their way to Judith's room, which Rosa and the women from the kitchen had transformed as much as possible. Candles flickered on every surface, and late-blooming roses from Rosa's garden filled vases. Judith lay propped against pillows, wearing her finest bed jacket, her eyes alert and shining. Reverend Morrison, no relation to Jeb, despite the name, was a circuit preacher, used to unusual circumstances. He took in the sick room setting, the dying woman, the bride with her healing injuries, and the groom who looked ready to shoot anyone who objected, all without batting an eye. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice carrying the weight of countless frontier unions. "We are gathered here in the sight of God and this company to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The witnesses were few but heartfelt. Rosa, who wept openly. Jeb, standing proud as Wade's best man. Doc Harmon, who'd stayed after his visit, and a handful of the most senior ranch hands. But it was Judith's presence that Eden felt most strongly, the older woman's gaze never leaving them. "Wade Thomas Kestrel," the Reverend intoned, "do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Wade said, his voice rough but certain. His hand held Eden's tightly, as if anchoring himself to the moment. "Eden Marie Carter, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" Eden looked at Wade, seeing not the cold cattle baron who'd bought her, but the complex, wounded, fiercely protective man she'd come to love. "I do." "The rings?" the Reverend asked. Wade produced 2 simple gold bands, when he'd found time to acquire them. Eden couldn't guess. His hands were steady as he slipped the ring onto her finger, but she could feel the emotion thrumming through him. "By the power vested in me by God and the territory of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Wade cupped Eden's face gently, mindful of her healing lip, and kissed her with a tenderness that made Rosa sob louder. When they parted, Eden saw tears in his eyes. They turned to Judith, and Wade knelt beside the bed, drawing Eden down with him. "We did it. Mother, she's really mine now, and I'm hers." Judith's good hand reached out, touching first Eden's face, then Wade's. Her lips formed words they could barely hear. "Love protects, always." "1 Corinthians," Eden whispered, recognizing the verse. "Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." Judith smiled then, a real smile that transformed her wasted features. Her eyes moved between them one more time before closing, her hand still clasped in theirs. "Mother?" Wade's voice cracked. Doc Harmon moved forward, checking her pulse, listening to her breathing. "She's sleeping," he said gently. "Let her rest." The impromptu wedding supper that followed was subdued but sincere. The ranch hands offered rough congratulations, and Rosa had somehow managed to produce a small cake despite the short notice. Eden found herself wearing Wade's name like an unfamiliar garment, Eden Kestrel, mistress of Red Mesa. As the evening wore on, guests drifted away, leaving Wade and Eden alone in the parlor. The rain had stopped, and moonlight streamed through the windows. "Are you sorry?" Wade asked suddenly. "That it wasn't grander?" "No," Eden said honestly. "It was perfect. Your mother was there. The people who matter were there. What more did we need?" Wade pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. "I used to imagine my wedding, when I was young and foolish. There would be hundreds of guests, politicians and cattle barons, showing the world that Wade Kestrel had arrived." He laughed softly. "Instead, I married a woman I bought, in my dying mother's bedroom, with a black eye from a gunfight." "Regrets?" Eden asked, though she thought she knew the answer. "Never." He kissed her temple. "This is real. The other was just pride and show." He was quiet for a moment. "I need to tell you something. About the will." Eden tensed. "What about it?" "I've already had it changed. Everything goes to you if something happens to me. The ranch, the cattle, all of it. Wade, listen, there will be men who try to challenge it. Thornton, certainly. Other ranchers who think a woman can't hold land. But I've made it ironclad. Filed copies with lawyers in Austin. Red Mesa is yours. Ours," Eden corrected firmly. "I don't want to think about, but we have to. This life, this place, it's dangerous. I've made enemies. And now that you're my wife, really and legally my wife, you're a target too." His arms tightened around her. "I need to know you'll be protected if—" "Stop." Eden turned in his arms, framing his face with her hands. "We've just gotten married. Can we have one night without planning for disaster?" Wade studied her face, then nodded slowly. "One night." They climbed the stairs together, past Judith's room where Rosa kept vigil, to the master bedroom Eden had never entered before. It was distinctly Wade's space, dark wood, leather, weapons on the walls. But there were surprises too, more books, a painting of the ranch in spring, a daguerreotype of a younger Judith with a small boy who must have been Wade. "This is your room now too," Wade said, suddenly uncertain. "We can change things, make it more." Eden silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect." They came together as husband and wife with a rightness that had nothing to do with law or ceremony. The past, the purchase, the shame, the violence fell away, leaving only two people who had found each other against all odds. Later, as Eden drowsed in Wade's arms, she heard him whisper, "Thank you." "For what?" "For coming back, for choosing this, for making me believe I could be more than what I'd become." Eden turned to face him, tracing the scar on his cheek from their rescue. "We saved each other. That's what love does." A sound from down the hall made them both alert. Rosa's voice, urgent and tearful. Wade was out of bed and pulling on clothes before Eden could fully process what was happening. They found Rosa in Judith's room, kneeling beside the bed. "She woke for a moment," Rosa said through her tears. "She said happy and then—" Doc Harmon, who'd stayed the night anticipating this, confirmed what they already knew. Judith Kestrel had passed peacefully, having seen what she needed to see. Wade stood frozen, staring at his mother's still form. Eden moved to him, taking his hand. "She saw us married," she said softly. "She knew you were happy. She was at peace." Wade nodded, unable to speak. They stood vigil together as dawn broke over Red Mesa. The first sunrise of their married life, marked by both joy and sorrow. In the days that followed, as they prepared for Judith's funeral, Eden watched Wade navigate his grief with the same controlled intensity he brought to everything. But at night, in the privacy of their room, he let his walls down, mourning the mother who had never stopped believing in the boy he'd been. "She would have loved to see you truly mistress of Red Mesa," he said one evening as they sorted through Judith's belonging. "Teaching you all the things a proper rancher's wife should know." Eden held up a leather-bound journal filled with Judith's handwriting, recipes, household hints, memories. "She left me everything I need to know, and what she didn't write down, I'll learn." Among Judith's things, they found letters, correspondence with her sister back east, but also drafts of letters never sent, addressed to Wade. In them, Judith poured out her hopes for her son, her understanding of his pain, her desperate wish that he would find someone to help him heal. "She knew," Eden said wonderingly, reading one dated just after her arrival. "She knew what would happen between us." Wade read over her shoulder, his mother's words blurring through tears. "The girl has strength beneath her fear and kindness despite her circumstances. She looks at you and sees beyond the hardness. Perhaps she is the answer to prayers I never dared voice, scheming even from her sickbed," Wade said with a watery laugh. "I should have known." The funeral drew people from across the territory. Judith Kestrel had been respected, a lady of grace in a rough land. Eden stood beside Wade as they laid her to rest on the hill overlooking the ranch, the place Judith had chosen years ago. Lila Thornton attended, of course, elegant in black, her eyes widening when she realized Eden stood in the position of chief mourner, wearing the jet jewelry of a widow. "My condolences, Mr. Kestrel," she murmured after the service. "Mrs. Kestrel," she added to Eden, the title clearly sticking in her throat. "Thank you," Eden replied with quiet dignity. She felt Wade's hand tighten on hers, drawing strength from her presence. As the mourners departed, leaving only the household and closest friends, Jeb approached hesitantly. "Boss, Mrs. Kestrel," he said, and Eden realized with a start he meant her. "The men wanted you to know. We're all behind you, both of you, Miss Judith." She'd be proud. That night, their first as husband and wife without the shadow of impending loss. Wade and Eden sat on the porch of their home, truly their home now. The stars spread endless above them, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the moon. "What happens now?" Eden asked. Wade pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Now we live, we build, we make Red Mesa everything my mother dreamed it could be." He paused. "We have children who'll ride this land after us. We grow old together, surprising everyone who thought Wade Kestrel would die young and violent." "A real fairy tale ending," Eden teased gently. "No," Wade said seriously. "Something better. A real life, with real love, built on truth instead of illusion." He tilted her chin up, meeting her eyes in the darkness. "I love you, Eden Kestrel, my wife, my salvation, my future. I love you too," Eden whispered. "My husband, my choice, my home." They sat in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other through darkness and emerged into light. Red Mesa stretched around them, vast and challenging, and theirs. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new tests. But tonight, they were simply Wade and Eden Kestrel, married in the eyes of God and law, blessed by a dying woman's joy, ready to face whatever came, together, always together. The November morning dawned cold and clear, frost glittering on the grasslands like scattered diamonds. Eden stood in the doorway of the ranch house, watching the sun paint the horizon in shades of amber and rose. 3 weeks had passed since Judith's funeral, and Red Mesa had settled into a new rhythm under her and Wade's joint leadership. "Mrs. Kestrel." Rosa appeared at her elbow with a cup of coffee. "The men are gathering in the yard. Senor Wade wants to make the announcement." Eden nodded, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. Today. Wade would formally declare her as co-owner of Red Mesa before all the ranch hands and neighboring ranchers who'd been invited to witness. It was unprecedented in the territory, a woman holding equal legal claim to one of the largest ranches in Texas. She found Wade in his study, reviewing the legal documents one final time. He looked up as she entered, his gray eyes warming. "Second thoughts?" he asked, though his tone suggested he knew better. Never. Eden moved to stand beside him, studying the papers that would change everything. Though I suspect we're about to make quite a few enemies. Let them come. Wade's voice held that dangerous edge she'd come to recognize. And anyone who challenges your right to this land challenges me. Eden touched his hand gently. We faced them together, remember? No more fighting battles alone. Wade turned his palm up to interlace their fingers. Together. He agreed. The yard was crowded with people by the time they emerged. Eden recognized many faces, their own ranch hands, of course, but also neighboring ranchers, townspeople, even a few officials from Austin who'd made the journey to witness this unusual event. Sheriff Thornton stood near the back, his expression carefully neutral. Lila beside him in a dress that seemed too fine for a ranch gathering. Wade helped Eden onto a makeshift platform where they could be seen by all. The crowd quieted, expectant. Ladies and gentlemen, Wade began, his voice carrying clearly across the yard. Thank you for coming. As you know, Red Mesa has been my life's work. Every fence post, every head of cattle, every blade of grass has been fought for and won through sweat and blood. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Wade's history was well known, but a ranch, like a man, can't stand alone forever. It needs partnership, fresh perspective, someone to carry it forward into the future. He turned to Eden, extending his hand. 3 months ago, this woman came to Red Mesa. She has proven herself in every way, through hardship, through danger, through loss. She is my wife, but more than that, she is my partner in every sense. Eden stepped forward, her chin high despite the weight of so many stares. From this day forward, Wade continued, Eden Kestrel holds equal ownership of Red Mesa. Every document has been filed, every legal requirement met. Any business with this ranch is business with both of us. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Jeb began to clap. Others joined him. Rosa, Doc Harmon, many of the ranch hands who'd come to respect Eden, but Eden could see the resistance in other faces, the disbelief and disapproval. This is highly irregular. Kestrel, called out Magnus Bowman, who owned the spread to the north. A woman can't what? Wade's voice turned sharp. Can't own property. The law says otherwise? Can't run cattle? My wife can ride and shoot as well as any man here. Can't make decisions? She's shown better judgment in 3 months than some men do in a lifetime. But tradition, another voice protested. Tradition be damned, Wade said flatly. This is 1883, not 1783. The frontier is changing, and those who don't change with it get left behind. Eden stepped forward then, finding her voice. Gentlemen, I understand your concerns. This is new, unfamiliar, but I ask you to judge me by my actions, not your expectations. Red Mesa will continue to prosper. Our contracts will be honored, our partnerships maintained. The only difference is that now you deal with both Kestrels instead of one. And if we refuse? This from Carl Hutchinson, the man who'd leered at Eden at the funeral. If we take our business elsewhere? Eden felt Wade tense beside her, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. That's your choice, Mr. Hutchinson. But consider this. Red Mesa controls water rights to 3 major streams. We have the best breeding stock in the territory. We offer fair prices and honest dealing. Will your prejudice against me be worth losing all that? It was boldly spoken, and Eden saw surprise flicker across several faces. The mouse had roared. An elderly rancher named Samuel Pierce stepped forward. I've done business with Red Mesa for 15 years, he said slowly. Wade Kestrel has never cheated me, never broken his word. If he says his wife is his equal partner, that's good enough for me. He touched his hat to Eden. Ma'am. Others followed Pierce's lead, some grudgingly, some with genuine warmth. Not all. Hutchinson and Bowman left without a word, and Eden knew they'd make trouble if they could. But enough stayed, enough accepted, to make the declaration stick. As the crowd dispersed, Lila Thornton approached, her husband trailing behind, looking uncomfortable. How modern of you, Eden, Lila said, her smile sharp. Though I'd wonder if you truly understand what you've taken on. Running a ranch like Red Mesa. It's not like keeping house and tending sick old women. No, Eden agreed calmly. It's harder. Good thing I've had excellent teachers. She glanced meaningfully at Wade, then back to Lila. And I've always been a quick learner. Lila's smile faltered. Sheriff Thornton cleared his throat. Congratulations, Mrs. Kestrel. Kestrel. He nodded to them both. Come along, Lila. As they walked away, Eden heard Lila hiss something about upstart girls who don't know their place. Wade heard it too, his jaw tightening. Let it go, Eden said softly. She can't hurt us anymore. She'd better not try. Wade muttered, but he let Eden lead him back into the house. That evening, as they went over the ranch books together, Wade said suddenly, You handled Hutchinson well, and the others? I had a good teacher. Eden replied, making notations in the ledger. Someone once told me not to show fear, that it makes you stupid. Smart man, Wade said with a slight smile. He has his moments. Eden set down her pen, studying him. Are you sure about this? Wade, really sure? You've worked alone for so long. Wade caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. I've been alone for too long. My mother knew it, even if I didn't. He met her eyes. You make me stronger. Eden, not weaker. Any man who can't see the value in that is a fool. A knock interrupted them. Jeb entered, hat in hand, looking troubled. Boss, Mrs. Kestrel. We've got a problem. Someone cut the fence along the north boundary. We're missing about 50 head of cattle. Wade was on his feet immediately. Bowman? That'd be my guess. Want me to round up the boys? Yes, but... Wade glanced at Eden. We handle this legally. Send word to Sheriff Thornton. If Bowman wants to play games, we'll play by the rules. After Jeb left, Eden said, The old Wade would have ridden over there himself, guns blazing. The old Wade didn't have a wife who owned half his ranch. Wade replied, I can't afford to be reckless anymore. Neither can you. It was a sobering reminder of how their lives had changed. Every decision now affected both of them, their shared future. Sheriff Thornton arrived the next morning, looking deeply uncomfortable. Cut fences are a serious matter, he admitted. But without proof it was Bowman. Who else would it be? Wade demanded. The man left here yesterday mad enough to chew nails. Being angry isn't a crime. Kestrel, now. If you'd found your cattle on his land, that'd be different. Eden stepped forward. Then perhaps we should look for them. Sheriff, after all, stolen cattle have to go somewhere. Thornton shifted uneasily. I can't just ride onto a man's property without cause. But you can investigate a reported theft, Eden pressed. Unless, of course, there's some reason you'd prefer not to? The implication hung in the air. Thornton flushed. Now see here, Mrs. Kestrel. I see very clearly. Sheriff, the question is, will you do your job? Or do we need to contact the federal marshals? I'm sure they'd be interested in why local law enforcement is reluctant to investigate cattle theft. Wade watched his wife with something approaching awe. Where had his timid purchased girl gone? In her place stood a woman of steel wrapped in silk. Thornton capitulated. I'll look into it, but I do this by the book. Understand? No vigilante justice. Of course, Eden agreed smoothly. We're law-abiding citizens. Sheriff, we expect nothing less from our neighbors. After Thornton left, Wade pulled Eden into his arms. Federal marshals? Rose's cousin works in the marshal's office in Austin. She mentioned it while hemming my dress last week. Eden smiled. Information is just another kind of weapon, isn't it? Remind me never to cross you, Mrs. Kestrel. See that you don't Mr. Kestrel. The investigation that followed was a dance of legal maneuvering. Thornton, pressed between his duty and his social connections, found the missing cattle on Bowman's land by accident. Bowman claimed they'd wandered through the cut fence, that he was planning to return them. No one believed him, but proving intent was difficult. In the end, it was Eden who suggested the solution. "We don't need him prosecuted," she told Wade. "We need him to understand that crossing us has consequences." She invited several of the most influential ranchers' wives to tea, including Mrs. Pierce, whose husband had spoken up for them, over delicate china and Rosa's excellent cake. Eden casually mentioned their trouble with wandering cattle and cut fences. Within a week, Bowman found himself subtly frozen out of social gatherings. His wife complained bitterly about missed invitations and cold shoulders at church. Business deals he'd counted on fell through as other ranchers reconsidered their options. "You weaponized tea parties," Wade said admiringly when Bowman sent word he'd found the fence-cutting culprit among his own men and fired him. "Society has its own kind of power," Eden replied. "Men like Bowman forget that their wives have influence too." By December, Eden's position at Red Mesa was established fact. She rode out with Wade to inspect the herds, her divided skirts and confident seat in the saddle becoming a familiar sight. She negotiated contracts with a sharp eye for detail that surprised and impressed the men who'd initially dismissed her. One cold evening, as they sat by the fire in their bedroom, Eden said quietly, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For seeing more in me than I saw in myself. For giving me the chance to become this." She gestured at herself, at the confident woman she'd become. Wade set aside the book he'd been reading and pulled her onto his lap. "I didn't give you anything you didn't already possess. I just got out of your way and let you fly." "We flew together," Eden corrected, resting her head against his shoulder. "Together," Wade agreed, holding her close as the fire crackled and the winter wind howled outside. A knock at the door interrupted their peace. Rosa entered, her face glowing with excitement. Senora, she said breathlessly. "Forgive the intrusion, but I thought you should know immediately. The telegram just came from Austin. The railroad company has accepted your proposal. They'll run a spur line to Red Mesa." Wade was on his feet in an instant, Eden with him. They'd worked for weeks on the proposal, knowing a railroad connection would revolutionize their ability to get cattle to market. "We did it," Eden breathed. "Wade, we actually did it." He swung her around in a circle, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with plans and possibilities. "This changes everything," he said. "With rail access, we can expand the operation, bring in better breeding stock, ship directly to Chicago and Kansas City. We'll need to hire more men," Eden added, her mind already working, "and improve the roads from the outlying pastures to the loading areas." "Together," Wade said, catching her hands. "We'll build it together. Always together," Eden agreed. As they stood there, hands clasped, eyes bright with shared dreams, Eden thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, from that terrible morning in Dry Hollow when she'd been sold like property, through fear and anger and slowly growing love, to this, equal partners in life and land and future. She was no longer Eden Carter, the girl with nothing. She was Eden Kestrel, co-owner of Red Mesa, wife to a man who valued her strength as much as her beauty, builder of dreams in the wild Texas frontier. And this was only the beginning. Spring arrived at Red Mesa with a vengeance, bringing torrential rains that turned the dusty plains into seas of mud. But with the rains came grass, endless waves of green that promised fat cattle and prosperity. Eden stood on the porch of the ranch house, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, watching Wade direct the construction of the new railroad loading facilities. 6 months had passed since the railroad announcement, and Red Mesa buzzed with activity. New buildings were going up, more men had been hired, and the future Wade and Eden had dreamed of was taking shape before their eyes. "You shouldn't be on your feet so much," Rosa fussed, bringing Eden a cup of tea. The doctor said I'm healthy as one of our prize heifers." Eden interrupted with a smile. "Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on things." She didn't mention the other reason she stayed visible, the lingering challenges to her authority. Though most had accepted her position, there were always new men to convince, new battles to fight. Her pregnancy had only complicated matters, with some suggesting she should step back. Let Wade handle things alone. Eden had other ideas. Mrs. Kestrel. Jeb approached, still shy around her despite their friendship. "There's a gentleman here to see you. Says he's from the Territory Land Office." Eden's blood ran cold. Land disputes were serious business, often ending in bloodshed. "Where is he?" "Wade's got him in the study. He asked for you to join them." Eden smoothed her dress and made her way inside, her mind racing. In the study, she found Wade facing off with a thin man in a dusty suit who clutched a leather portfolio like a shield. "Ah, Mrs. Kestrel," the man said, rising politely. "I'm Clarence Weatherby from the Land Office. I'm here about a delicate matter." "Spit it out, Weatherby." Wade growled. "What's this about?" Weatherby cleared his throat nervously. "It concerns the legitimacy of Mrs. Kestrel's claim to co-ownership of Red Mesa. A complaint has been filed suggesting that undue influence was used to secure her position." "Undue influence?" Eden's voice was dangerously quiet. "By whom?" "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am, but the complainant suggests that given the unusual circumstances of your marriage, an investigation is warranted." Wade was on his feet before Eden could blink, his hand moving toward his gun. Get out before I—" "Wade!" Eden's voice cut through his rage. "Let me handle this." She turned to Weatherby, who was backing toward the door. "Mr. Weatherby, I assume you have documentation of this complaint?" Yes, ma'am." "And the specific allegations?" Weatherby fumbled with his portfolio. "That you were purchased and subsequently manipulated Mr. Kestrel into marriage and the property transfer." Eden laughed. Actually laughed. Weatherby looked startled, and even Wade stared at her. "Mr. Weatherby," Eden said, composing herself, "do you know the date of my marriage to Mr. Kestrel?" "October 15th, ma'am." "And the date the co-ownership papers were filed?" "November 20th. More than a month later. Tell me, in your professional opinion, does that suggest a hasty decision made under duress?" Eden moved to the desk, pulling out a leather-bound ledger. "Furthermore, here are the ranch records since I became co-owner. You'll note a 15% increase in profits, 3 new contracts with Eastern buyers, and the successful negotiation of the railroad spur. Does this suggest incompetence on my part?" Weatherby studied the documents, his expression shifting. "No, ma'am. These are quite impressive. As for the circumstances of our meeting," Eden continued, her chin high. "Yes, I came to Red Mesa under difficult conditions. But I challenge you to find any law that says a woman's past disqualifies her from owning property. Unless, of course, the territory of Texas has different standards for women than for men." "The law is the law," Weatherby admitted reluctantly. "Indeed, and speaking of the law," Eden smiled, and Wade recognized the dangerous sweetness in it. "I wonder what the federal authorities would make of a land office official harassing legitimate property owners based on anonymous complaints, particularly when said official's brother-in-law owns the property adjacent to ours. What was his name again?" "Magnus Bowman." Weatherby went pale. "How did you—" "Information is a valuable commodity, Mr. Weatherby. As valuable as cattle or land." Eden's voice hardened. "Now, you have 2 choices. You can pursue this baseless investigation, and I'll ensure every newspaper from here to Austin knows about your family connections and motivations. Or you can return to your office, mark this complaint as investigated and dismissed, and we never speak of it again." That's blackmail." "That's business," Wade said, speaking for the first time since Eden had taken control. "My wife is offering you a chance to leave with your reputation intact. I'd take it if I were you." Weatherby gathered his papers with shaking hands. "The complaint will be dismissed," he said stiffly. "Good day." After he left, Wade pulled Eden into his arms. "Bowman again. I should have killed him when I had the chance." "No," Eden said firmly. "We handle things properly now. Remember? Besides, I have a better idea." 2 days later, Eden invited Mrs. Bowman to tea. The woman arrived looking suspicious and defensive, clearly expecting a confrontation. Instead, Eden served her finest china and Rosa's best pastries, making pleasant small talk about the weather and the coming calving season. Only when Mrs. Bowman had relaxed slightly did Eden spring her trap. "I wanted to thank you," Eden said sweetly. "Thank me?" Mrs. Bowman looked confused. "For the opportunity to prove myself. You see, when your husband sent that complaint to the land office, he forced me to compile all the evidence of my contributions to Red Mesa. The railroad executives were quite impressed when I shared it with them." Eden sipped her tea. "In fact, they've offered us an exclusive shipping contract. Very lucrative." Mrs. Bowman's face flushed. "I don't know what you mean. Magnus would never—" "Of course not," Eden agreed. "Just as he would never cut our fences or steal our cattle. Your husband is obviously above such petty actions." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "It must be difficult, though, watching Red Mesa prosper while your own ranch struggles. I heard you had to sell off part of your herd to make the bank payment last month." "How dare you?" "I dare because I can," Eden said, all pretense of friendliness dropping away. "Your husband made an enemy of me. Mrs. Bowman. That was unwise, but I'm willing to be magnanimous. Tell Magnus to tend his own land and leave ours alone, and perhaps some of Red Mesa's prosperity will flow his way. Continue these attacks, and I'll destroy you both. Legally, financially, socially. The choice is yours." Mrs. Bowman left in a fury, but within a week, Magnus Bowman sent a formal letter of apology for the misunderstanding with the land office. He even inquired about purchasing some of Red Mesa's superior breeding stock. "You're terrifying," Wade said admiringly as they read the letter together. "Remind me again why I thought you needed protecting?" "Because when we met, I did," Eden replied honestly. "But you gave me the space to grow strong, to become who I was meant to be." Spring turned to summer, and Eden's pregnancy progressed. She refused to be confined, instead adapting her activities to her changing body. She conducted business from the porch when riding became uncomfortable, reviewed contracts while Rosa fussed over her swelling ankles, and never let anyone suggest that impending motherhood made her less capable. One evening in late July, as thunderheads built on the horizon, Eden felt the first pains. Wade, who'd been hovering anxiously for weeks, immediately flew into action. "Jeb, ride for Doc Harmon. Rosa, we need hot water. Clean sheets." "Wade," Eden said calmly, though sweat beaded her forehead. "We have time. Babies don't come as fast as calves." But Wade was beyond reason, pacing like a caged wolf as the storm broke outside. The labor was long and difficult, stretching through the night and into the next day. Eden heard Wade threatening Doc Harmon at one point, demanding he do something or face the consequences. "If you shoot the doctor," Eden managed between contractions, "who'll deliver your child?" Dawn was breaking, the storm having washed the world clean, when their son finally arrived. Eden, exhausted but triumphant, watched Wade hold the tiny bundle with hands that shook. "He's so small," Wade whispered, wonder replacing the fear that had gripped him for hours. "Look at him. Eden. We made this. We made a life." "Thomas Wade Kestrel, Jr.," Eden said softly, "though I think we'll call him Tom. After my father," Wade said, his eyes suspiciously bright. "He would have been proud. Mother, too." As Eden dozed, worn out from her ordeal, she heard Wade talking softly to their son, making promises about the life they'd build for him. The legacy of Red Mesa that would be his birthright. The news of Tom's birth spread quickly. Well-wishers arrived with gifts and congratulations, and even some of their former detractors sent polite notes. A son cemented the Kestrel dynasty, ensuring Red Mesa's future for another generation. But Eden wasn't done building yet. When Tom was 3 months old, she proposed something that made even Wade's eyes widen. "A school," she said, "here on Red Mesa, for our workers' children and any from the neighboring ranches who want to attend." "A school," Wade repeated slowly. "Think about it. We're bringing in families now. Not just single men. Those children need education if they're going to be more than hired hands. And who knows? Maybe one of them will grow up to manage our operations, or become a foreman, or start their own spread. And you want to pay for this? It's an investment. In people. In the future. In the community we're building here. Eden shifted Tom to her other arm, the baby gurgling contentedly. Besides, I was thinking we could name it after your mother, the Judith Kestrel School. Wade was quiet for a long moment, then crossed to kiss his wife soundly. Have I told you today that you're brilliant? Not since breakfast, Eden replied with a smile. The school opened the following spring, with a young teacher from Austin whom Eden had carefully vetted. 12 children attended initially, including several from families who'd never thought education possible for their offspring. Eden often visited, sometimes bringing Tom to enchant the students. She remembered her own abbreviated education, cut short by her mother's death and Sam's indifference. These children would have better... One afternoon, as she was leaving the school, Eden encountered Lila Thornton on the road. They hadn't spoken since the announcement of Eden's co-ownership of Red Mesa. Mrs. Kestrel, Lila said stiffly. I heard about your school. How charitable of you. It's not charity, Eden replied calmly. It's community building. Something I learned from watching the best and worst of Dry Hollow society. Lila's face tightened. You've done well for yourself. The purchased girl becomes a cattle queen. Yes, Eden agreed simply. I have done well. I found a man who sees my worth beyond my circumstances. I built a partnership based on mutual respect and love. I bore a son who'll inherit an empire we're creating together. She met Lila's eyes directly. I'm sorry you settled for less. Lila's careful composure cracked. James is a good man. We have a respectable life. But do you have love? Eden asked gently. Do you have a partner who values your mind as much as your beauty? Do you wake each morning excited about what you'll build together? She shook her head. I was bought for $300. Lila, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me to Wade, and Wade brought me to myself. She left Lila standing in the road, looking lost and suddenly older. That evening, as Eden recounted the encounter to Wade, he pulled her onto his lap, Tom sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby. No regrets? He asked, as he did sometimes when the weight of their unusual beginning pressed on him. Only one, Eden said, making him stiffen. Then she smiled. I wish your mother could see us now, could see what we've built together. Wade relaxed, holding her closer. She sees, somehow. I believe she sees. Outside, the sun set over Red Mesa, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The railroad spur gleamed in the distance, symbol of progress and prosperity. Smoke rose from the chimneys of the workers' homes, families settling in for the evening. And in the big house on the rise, Eden and Wade Kestrel sat together, their son sleeping nearby, their love a quiet strength that had transformed them both. From purchased girl to cattle queen, from cold baron to loving husband, from a business transaction to a love story that would be told in the territory for generations. Eden smiled, thinking of the frightened girl who'd stood in Dry Hollow's dusty street a lifetime ago. That girl could never have imagined this moment, respected, loved, powerful in her own right. But then, she'd never imagined Wade either, the complex man who'd seen her strength before she knew it existed. I love you, she said suddenly, needing him to know. I love you too, Wade replied, pressing a kiss to her hair. My wife, my partner, my heart. As the stars emerged one by one in the vast Texas sky, Eden Carter Kestrel closed her eyes and smiled. She was home. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Eden and Wade's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening from today? Please comment below and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about this story. Did you believe in their love despite its unconventional beginning? I'd love to hear what you think.